So I think we have our work cut out for us. I don't see this as being a bandwagon that everybody's going to jump on naturally. As I mentioned in passing, I think the church, the Judeo-Christian tradition, still has the remnants of all of this there. For example, Paul's theology of baptism, he says, do you not know you were baptized into the death of Christ? It was clearly a symbolic drowning ceremony, going down into the water and symbolically dying. Every single initiation rite I've studied, the boy has to face on a gut level his own mortality. You are going to die. Right? This life thing is only limited. It's only going to last for a few years. And you better get it right now. The word initiation gives away the bias. We were concerned about getting it right at the end, making an act of contrition 10 minutes before we died, or getting a priest an hour before we died, or making a deathbed confession. Initiation is much wiser. It says, let's get it right at the beginning. Initiation. And get the world framed correctly at the beginning. Know that it's just a school, and you're just here for a little while, and the elders and the father's role is to keep you from going down a lot of dead ends. You'll probably still make mistakes, but the great good news is that even these mistakes can be turned around, and that there's no final mistake at all, except not to stay on the journey. Maybe some of you are confirmed like I was. We have now changed it. But I remember back somewhere in the mid-50s in Kansas when I was confirmed, and the bishop came along. I'm kneeling there. I don't know if I had another little white suit on. But he comes along and lays his hand on my forehead, and then he slapped me on the cheek. And we were told this was to remind us that we were to be soldiers of Christ. We now know that that slap was a leftover from almost every initiation rite. In fact, I found right here in New Mexico that the Pueblo boys, when they are initiated in the kivas, are ritually whipped by the elders. Now, I know the secular humanist mind says, oh my God, this is child abuse, this is terrible. But inside of liminal space and inside of sacred space, you can do things completely different, and they have a completely different psychological meaning. It's exactly the opposite of abuse. It's not abuse at all. In fact, it's telling the boy on the body level, which is the only level he remembers and respects, that life is hard. And don't spend your whole life trying to make it easy for yourself. If you remember, those of you who read Scott Peck's Road Less Traveled, that's the very first line of The Road Less Traveled, which is the biggest selling book after the Bible of all time. And he starts by saying, life is difficult. And if you don't know that in your belly, what the male is going to do is he'll do everything he can to try to make life easy for himself, to seek perk and privilege and position. It's really amazing that it was all there. And then initiation always ended with a sumptuous banquet in which the boy was reminded of his adult status, his beloved status, his special status, his transformed status. He was the center of attention for days on end. That, I'm sure, is what the Christian Eucharist was supposed to be. A sumptuous, erotic banquet of rich food and intoxicating wine. But even there, at least in my church, we made the Mass into something that you could attend if you were worthy. Became back into the performance principle, back into attainment, and it lost all of the great transformative power of grace, where our right to be there is precisely because we're unworthy, and God is our worthiness, not because we have attained or achieved any kind of worthiness. So the elements are still there. I'm hoping I can get some sacramental theologians to help me work on this and say, can we rediscover this in the Christian West? Is there a way of renaming this, re-ritualizing this in a way that males can respect? And thank God there's a lot of men that are willing and ready to to work with me on that. And I invite you to the same thing. I think it's an immense task, but I can't think of a more important one. I was just, the beginning of the month, teaching in Brazil, and I'd been invited down there to teach the missionaries. And I said, well, what do you want the retreat to be on? And they said, on masculine spirituality. And I said, are you sure you want that? I said, because I knew there were going to be nuns there and lay missionaries, men and women, young married women and young unmarried women. I said, why would they want masculine spirituality? And they told me what we know is true in a lot of Latin America. They said, if there's one single problem in Brazil that is undercutting every effort and every attempt to renew things, it's the immature problem. Forgive me, I don't mean to put down any race, because I think we're all in this together. But they were working with Brazilians, and they said the single problem is the immense immaturity of the Brazilian male. That he lives life just drugs, sex, and rock and roll, in their opinion, and wants nothing more than that. And cannot be faithful to responsibility, to family, to children, to nonviolence. He's just trapped inside of a very small psyche. And as a Catholic, I couldn't help but think, this was one of the first countries that the Portuguese came over and supposedly evangelized, colonized. Churches on every corner, huge, sumptuous Catholic churches, where apparently the gospel has been preached for 300 to 400 years. And on the last day there, they took me to some of those churches, and there it was, right? Beautifully dressed statues, which only women would like to dress, I would think, And I think men get into dressing statues, normally. And the church is filled with sweet, loving old ladies, lighting candles, dressing statues, offering their prayers. God bless them. I'm sure they're holding us together, But again, I just wanted to weep. And the missionary said, see, here it is. This is our religion. This is our church. That it's a religion for women and a spirituality that men cannot respect and obviously have not profited from. So I give you that sort of tragic contemporary example, maybe to let you know, brothers, how urgent the need is. Again, as I told you before, our goal is long-term. The males program, we're aiming for 5 generations from now. That we can just maybe get this started. Maybe some people can start talking about it. My hope this year is to finally put some of this down in writing. So pray that I can write a good book on male initiation that can honestly help people and not just be theoretical and be stuffed away on a bookshelf.